The following content is brought to you by MYND Initiative Incorporated. The opinions expressed in the following conversation are of the hosts and do not in any way represent the opinions of MYND Initiative as a whole. Some themes in this series may be distressing or triggering for some listeners, and so viewer discretion is advised. If any of the content does trigger uncomfortable feelings or cause distress, we encourage you to reach out to us via our Facebook page or seek further support from beyondblue.org or contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 for 24/7 over-the-phone support. We would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we all stand, and we extend our respect to the elders, both past and present.
Hi everyone, my name's Jason and this is my friend Bajan, and we have a show called Does It Mess With Your Mind, where we talk about mental health issues and the stigma behind mental health, and we give book reviews and we just talk about lifestyle and everything else that may impact your mental health. Good evening. Welcome to Does It Mess With Your Mind? I am your co-host Jason, and here with me tonight is Pajan. How are you tonight, Pajan?
Hello there, I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. Interesting topic tonight. The difference between like physical pain and mental pain and how you express that and get that out of your head. What do you think? Like, we all know what physical pain's like. You get a paper cut or something like that, or someone gives you a cork in the leg, or you're doing your exercise and you hyperextend or something like that, and you can really feel it. But mental pain in itself, like when you've got a tedious task and you've got to do it over and over and over again, you can feel your brain just kind of building up and ready to explode. You ever had one of those kind of feelings?
Oh boy, yes, a lot actually, especially during the time when I had to do that something that I didn't want to do, be it in my career or at my job or anywhere. Right now, I'm really lucky to be doing what I love doing, and yeah, I haven't had that experience recently, but in the past, I used to experience that all the time, especially if it was something that I didn't want to do, but I needed to, or I needed to do, mostly in my career sector. And yeah, and even though the pain is not physical, it feels real. It is real. What do you think, Jason? Is mental pain real and comparable to physical pain? How would you do that?
I definitely feel like it is real. It is very intense, that kind of pain, the one I get anyway. Like if you were to give me a bunch of nails and go and hammer it into a board, by the time I got to about the sixth nail, I would be just in intense pain in my head. And I can't really explain it because I don't really know what it is. To me, it's like a massive amount of pressure. And the more I keep doing that particular task, the harder it is for my brain. It's like if I was to keep doing it, someone has got my head in a vice. Um, and yeah, it can get really excruciating,
Yeah,
but sometimes,
yeah,
go on.
and it's like as you're doing that task, it's as if like your whole body like screams at you to stop doing it, because for some reason it just feels pain. The whole body feels pain, and your whole the mind, the body, everything just screams at you to like stop doing it, man. I don't want to do it anymore. And that anguish, it just turns into a quote unquote or torture.
Yeah, well, my whole body, because my brain is in that kind of state, my whole body is just getting tenser and tenser and tenser. So eventually I have to give up and walk away, do something else for a little bit, and then come back and restart the task. But if I go and try and push my way through it, eventually I will pretty much become angry or upset or something like that. And someone will come up and talk to me, and I'll just be like, rah! So yeah, for me, mental pain is definitely something there. It doesn't present like physical pain. Physical pain, um, for me, if I cut my hand or if I hit my hand with a hammer or something like that, my brain is totally fine with that. I can still function in a non-tense kind of way. But that mental pain that I get and the way how it tenses up my body and everything else is just something totally different. And it is debilitating. Like if I was to have something happen where I had that permanently, like day in, day out, far out, I couldn't function.
And okay, having said that, physical pain, we can see the see physical pain. We can see the bruise, the cut, and everything. But for mental pain, we can't see anything. So where do you think does it originate? Like, what is the source of mental pain then?
I have no idea. For
Uh,
me, I
in
wonder if it's like an OCD or something like that I've got, or an ADHD or something like that. But I don't know where it originates from, but I know what triggers it, and that's doing like a medial task over and over and over. Um, it just comes on. It's not something that I can control. And I can't say I've ever tried to take like painkillers or something else before I try and do it to try and see if there's a way around it. But I just know that it is something that will fully tense up my body.
And when you say that it's a form of OCD or ADHD and doing menial tasks is the trigger for that, have you ever thought about like where it originates from, as in like what is it that is going on in your mind, or to phrase it in another way, what is it that you believe that makes you think that you are feeling pain even if your body is completely fine, even if our body is completely fine? Because the way I see it, mental pain is a result of a very strongly crystallized belief system. And I don't want to devalue anything, but when I say belief system, it just means that it is what you what you believe deep inside your heart. And when we feel mental pain, when we feel emotional pain, um, we believe in some part of our heart. We some part of us believes that that pain is real, and it triggers some physical reactions similar to physical pain. So what do you think about that?
Well, mental mental health from if your brain is perfectly fine, um, then yeah, emotions and stuff like that might come along. So we are a product of our environment, what we eat and everything else. So all of those kind of chemical reactions in our body are going to have an effect on our brain. If we drink a can of Coke, or if we eat a pizza full of like gluten or something like that, we might have an energy rush and we might feel like we're on speed. Um, but then you do have people with mental illness that is outside of that. You have people with schizophrenia and stuff like that, which is something that is happening in their brain that is something debilitating, and it is not as a result of emotions. Um, like, yeah. And then you've got other things like that, like if you had a stroke or something like that, where you're mentally impaired. So what you're saying, like if you were a perfectly healthy person and for some reason your mental hygiene became really bad, like you weren't actually paying attention to what you were doing every single day, you were just engaged in doing without thinking, so going to work every single day, doing the same repetitive jobs, everything else, and then you suffered a breakdown, it would be probably, well, I don't want to make assumptions, but I would say if you were suffering a breakdown, it would be because you weren't present and being feeling of what was actually going on in your head at that point in time. You were just, I guess, stuck in a rut and doing it for the money and
So,
not
I'll just
focusing on your
interrupt you.
happiness.
Yeah, yeah, I'll just interrupt you here. So, by that, when you say like you were stuck in a rut, and when you go through a breakdown, what would you say if I said, the reason we go through episodes of mental breakdown, or even like severe depression, or some or any other form of psychological breakdown, is not being able to express all the emotions and feelings within us a cause of that breakdown?
Yes and no. I mean, it can be uh, trauma, and it can be trauma from a long time ago. And for whatever reason we don't understand, we can just suddenly become affected by those emotions. And that can be going on in the back of our head, simply um, such as us knowing if we've bought a car and suddenly we're seeing that car all the time, it's because we've suddenly became aware of it. So if we had a certain traumatic event go on in our past, something happens at that point in time and suddenly we're aware of it happening all the way around us, can increase our emotional focus and cause us to lose the ability to look after our emotions at that point in time.
And how important do you think it is for us to work through our trauma and find a solution, for a lack of a better word, to at least express what is going on inside us and what we have experienced that caused us trauma in the past? Like, because when you said that the breakdown could have been a result of trauma being repeated all over again, so what would you think? No, let me rephrase it again. Like, what is it that how okay would it be if I said that we need to focus on letting go of the trauma rather than just holding it within us?
Yeah, well, that's how you move forward, how you deal with trauma. And trauma can be associated with a particular event, or you could smell something and it would bring back that memory, or a certain sound or something like that. The ability to process it might require you to get specific help. There are people out there that deal directly in trauma, like psychologists who are trauma informed care, and they actually help you get into that safe space to look into these emotions. But yes, if you were suddenly hearing or smelling something and it was eliciting a very strong emotion in a bad way, yeah, go out and seek some help.
And when you said that there are specialists who specialize in helping people move on from trauma and come to terms with their trauma, uh, uh, the one thing that I couldn't think about, I think, was the psychologists and the psychiatrists and anyone who is involved in that space. They have their own set of preconceived notions and belief system. So what is the impact that their belief system could have on a patient?
I I don't know. As a professional, really, you should be pushing all of your biases and all of that kind of stuff aside.
Can you
Um,
do that?
yeah, yeah. When you focus on the actual patient, as a professional, you should be actually evaluating all of your own biases and stuff anyway. Um, I think most professionals would be sitting down at least once a week with someone else to have a talk through whatever is going on within their personal life versus what's going on in the cases and stuff, and see if someone else can pick up any kind of biases that you might be having in your life. Or you might just feel it. Like when someone's talking about it in front of you, you might just go, hey, this feels a bit too close for home. You might have to go and see someone else.
And assuming that the counselor or the specialist can just detach themselves and look at the patient objectively, um, what is it that keeps them grounded and rooted enough within the patient's worldview that enables them to make a decision based on what they know of the subject and not based on what they think of the subject?
Well, ultimately, it is the person with the issue. They're not really a subject, but they're a person who is going through something, and they are the one that has to get through it. From a professional's point of view, you can't lead a horse to water and make it drink. So you can show a person the path, and they have to be ready to walk the path to actually make it out. And it's more the professional's job to actually go, okay, what does this actual path look like? Can you go down a bumpy road? Do I need to make it a nice, smooth, windy road to help you get out of this? It's the professional's job to make it a safe space to be able to explore this kind of stuff, and be able to move forward.
And now moving back to the person experience with the issue and experiencing the trauma. What was the question? Them not being able to express their trauma. What is the role of the society and the culture and the existing and the existing dogma in letting the person express what they feel? Do you think that the society and the societal and the culture that we have is conducive to letting people express their trauma, or is it forcing people to hide behind a veneer of smile and a happy face?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because I've been listening to some podcasts lately that talk about how culture can change your perception of emotion. So if you come from a different culture, the way how you think of the word joy or love or happiness might be defined differently within that culture. So when you come, say, you come to Australia and you've got a definition of these kind of things from your background and culture, when you're sitting in front of a psychologist and going, I don't feel joy, then it really is a good technique for the psychologist to go, okay, can you tell me what that definition of joy is? What is joy? And if you're not exploring those kind of concepts, that's where I can see that things would break down. Because if you make the assumption that my joy is the same as your joy, I might come up with a different path to help you find joy. And it's not the path that will help you find the joy that you want, just simply because we have the same word, but the meaning is totally different to us because our cultural backgrounds for that meaning are totally different.
Fair enough. That's a very good, that's a very interesting point right there. Each of us has a different definition for the word. And so what is the role of the counselor or even just someone who is listening to what the other person is expressing? What is the role that they can play to enable those people to come to terms with their trauma and any negative experience that they have had in the past?
There are lots of different techniques. One of the main ones is, trying to think of the name of it, dialectic dialectic behavior therapy, so DBT. So that's where you just talk it out. And then you kind of, as you're talking it out, you're processing it and you're working through exactly what's going on. And that can take some time. And then you might throw in some acceptance therapy as well. So like if a person is talking through a particular scenario and they keep on making the same mistakes because they don't want to accept what the outcome it is, you might work with that person to actually accept what the right path is, even though it might be a really hard path for them to take. You might say, if you don't take this path, you're going to continue to keep making these mistakes. So that might be something that's like workplace related, like you keep on swapping jobs or something like that, because you keep on getting to a point where you're unhappy, and rather than deal with the unhappiness of talking to your boss or something like that, you just go out and find a new job. So you might go, okay, you actually need to talk to your boss and tell your boss how you're feeling. That might be really hard for you, but you need to deal with that conflict. So there's about 9 different ways that I know of for talking to a person and processing that trauma. And then I guess for a social worker or an actual psychologist or something like that, they will have a bunch of other stuff that they will go through to be able to help you. But the main thing is that they need to create that safe space, and they need to be able to look at you and go, okay, are we what we were talking about at the moment, is that leading you to still be safe, or is this stuff actually getting you to a point where you're unsafe, you're suicidal, you're pushing away friends and family, you're just angry all the time and everything else? And that's where they might go, okay, we need to go and talk to a GP or something like that. We need to get you to calm down a little bit so that way we can get you past this and to the next part of your life. Or, you know, depending on what's happened, something might be so traumatic, and it might have changed your brain in such a way that you need medication for the rest of your life. Otherwise, you can't maintain connections with families and everything else because you're just too angry, too hyper.
That's a fantastic point. And I have another question for you. When you said that we need to create a safe space for those people to be able to express what is inside them that's troubling them, from my own experience, what I know is we are all afraid of being judged and we're all afraid of being judged in one way or another. So how do you create a safe space for those people?
In the first instance, you want to try and like meet the person that needs care within the realm of somewhere that they feel comfortable. So if they're a person that is having a particular work-related issue and stuff like that, you might not invite them to your office, which looks exactly the same as their work, right? You might go out and meet them in a park or something like that. Or if someone's just been through like a car crash or something like that, you might meet them in a cafe or something like that is away from traffic. It's all about making that safe connection in the first place and only moving at the speed that person is ready to move at. So within the first session, you don't want to go, hey mate, how you going? What's your deal? How do we get past this, or whatever else? Because they're suddenly just going to be like, oh my God, this guy's just focused on the solution and getting me out of here and not actually on the problem of what I've got. So you've really got to go at that person's pace.
So we've got to, so just to summarize what you said there, we've got to like go at that person's space and meet them in a physical space that they feel comfortable with, and that is away from the place of their trauma or their negative experience. And the second point was to warm them up and let them set the pace for the conversation and for the revelation.
Yeah, because ultimately they're the expert in what they're going through. So if you were going through something and I was coming along and going, oh, you just feel like this or you just feel like that. Well, I'm projecting that I'm the expert of what you're going through. And that's not right. You're the expert of what you're going through. So that's what we want to deal with, because ultimately you know what feels right for you to be able to move forward and get past this stuff. And it's just about us having the curiosity to find what that is, and also to find that path of courage so that way you can take that path, feel safe, and move past this stuff.
And what separates the people who can build that safe space and the people who pretend to build that safe space? Because people go undergoing trauma or any negative experiences, they can feel it. They can feel the energy or the aura or the vibe, what do we call it, of the other person. So how would you separate? How would you separate someone who is creating a safe space with someone who is just pretending to do so?
That's a really hard question. Like,
How would you do it with your using your own experiences?
for me, I guess it would be just what I'm internally feeling. So if I walked up to you and we were having a conversation and you were like, okay, blah, 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 but I just was not feeling it. There was some sense of you that, hey, something's not right here, then I would be acting on that. Like, okay, this isn't right for me. I need to find someone else, or I need to give this guy one more time. We need to go to a different location or something like that and see if I feel differently. Maybe it's just this one day at this one place at this one time. But if I'm not feeling it in two or three kind of meetings, then you've got to use your intuition to move on, because otherwise you really just, as you as the expert, you're adding pressure on top of what you're trying to solve by trying to push on with something that's not working.
And maybe this could be the final question that I have. What about the people who do not have the support system around them to express what they want to express?
Well, it depends on what they want to express. I mean, there are different services out there for mediation. So let's say that you're in your family and your family are very particularly judgy, and maybe you've got an eating disorder and they're just trying to force food down you all the time. Well, maybe reach out to kind of those mediation services and get a mediator between you and try and talk it out, so that way the mediator can help you present exactly how you're feeling. Um, the other one is, it just depends on what you're comfortable with. Like, you might bring one of those people along to your psychology session or something like that, and you might ask for your psychologist to advocate exactly what they're seeing, and what they're working through with you, and how that person can best help you to be on that right path. Or it might be just a case of, hey, these people are actually toxic for you. So, you know, stop inviting John around to your house because he keeps bringing drugs and giving you drugs, and that's causing you to have psychosis. So if you don't want to have psychosis anymore and end up in hospital and everything else, stop doing drugs, you know?
That's a fantastic point. And at the end, you raised the topic of toxicity and toxic people, and having toxic people around you as in the environment. I believe that we could do that in an upcoming episode. But yeah, Jason, any final words before we wrap up the episode?
Yeah, I guess from that one on the drugs and everything else, like, everyone has a dignity of risk. Everyone has a choice to live a life that they want to live. And I'm not going to make a judgment on if you want to do drugs or stuff like that. But I think when stuff turns into a mental health episode and you're sitting in front of like a doctor or something like that, and they're saying, hey, you need to reevaluate your choices. If you're sitting there going, this is how I actually cope with my life, then you probably do need to sit down with a counselor or a psychologist or something like that and start building that path to where you find your joy, because you're really not in a good spot. And by continuing what you're doing, it's not going to lead to a great outcome. You're pretty much stuck in that point for a long time.
That's true. And yeah, and I totally agree with what you said. And especially when it comes to like your social circle, you need to be very, very picky of who you choose in your life, because not everybody is a right fit for you. Not everybody is going to want to see you progress. Not everybody is going to want to see you be happy. There are people who will actively and deliberately uh, try to harm you or block you from doing what you want to do. And there will be people with malicious intent, and those are the people that you avoid. This is a topic that we are going to explore in a future episode of Does It Mess With Your Mind? For now, I will pass the baton to Jason to wrap up the episode.
Yeah, so if you did hear anything tonight that was triggering, if you don't agree with us, let us know in the comments, jump on Facebook, let us know. But if you're not feeling well, if this is causing you some sort of anguish or something like that, please go out and get some help. Please go and see the emergency room if you're feeling really down and it's leading you to make rash decisions. We want to see you here next week. Thank you, Pajan. It has been a great episode. Thank you to Will for editing this and chucking it up into YouTube for us. And thank you to Christina for looking after us and making sure that our episodes meet all the standards that we need to meet. Good night, Pajan. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you very much. I'll see you next week. And good night, everyone.
Thank you.